Well, since the turn of the year, I've been meaning to do a video cast about the directions and the trends that the world is likely to take in 2018. But the first 2 weeks, I couldn't do that because two of the things on the list came to public prominence. One was the attempt to create unrest in Iran as part of the plan to unseat and remove the current government of Iran as part of a long-term plan. And then the following week, the censorship of social media with Facebook and Twitter, etc., came to prominence. And both of those were on my original list for the things likely to be prominent and clear in 2018. And to predict the future is to understand where the hidden hand dictating world events wants to take the world. Because unless there's this intervention by the 7.5 billion humans who could intervene if they got together and stopped fighting each other, being divided and ruled, if that intervention doesn't happen, then what is planned will happen. And therefore, if you can uncover what is planned, you can predict what will happen. And this is why people have noted that what was in my books in the 1990s, in terms of where the world was planned to be taken, is happening or has happened already. Because of this process of know what the outcome is planned to be, and then you see very clearly the progression day by day, week by week towards that outcome. So, first of all, this is the basic, many levels to it and much detail to it, but this is the basic direction in which the world is planned to be taken, indeed is being taken. It's all around us now. And knowing this, people will be able to see the progression from this point if they haven't come across it before. First of all, the world, human society, is controlled by a hidden network. It works through secret societies, semi-secret organizations, etc. It's like a web. And so organizations like governments and banks and internet giants, social media giants, appear in the world of the scene to be in and of themselves, individual companies run by individual groups of people. But when you go deeper into the level of this web, the same networks, the same web controls Facebook, as controls Twitter, as controls Google, as controls the banking system, as controls governments, and controls the media at ownership level and deeper in terms of the mainstream media. So it's not, in terms of society-changing events, it's not happening randomly. It's happening according to a plan. And where this is designed to end is with a structure that I call the Hunger Games Society, where you've got what is known today as the 1% or the less than 1% at the peak of the pyramid, controlling everything, controlling all wealth, controlling all government, controlling all decision-making, and so on. The bottom of the pyramid, designed to be the rest of humanity. Yes, even those people that think they're doing well now and they've got a few bob in the bank and everything's going okay, this doesn't affect me. Well, it's planned to affect you, because if you're not part of the less than 1%, they want what you've got as well. And so you have this massive humanity at the bottom of the pyramid in financial servitude and decision-making servitude to the 1%, less than 1% at the peak of the pyramid. Now, this status quo is designed to be held in place by the middle strata of this Hunger Games society pyramid, which is a merciless, vicious police state, ultimately controlled not even by humans, but by artificial intelligence. This is why more and more of the military is being taken over by AI, and this is planned to continue through 2018 and beyond. So you've got this Hunger Games structure, and governmentally, it's planned to be controlled by a world government which would dictate to every community in the world. A world central bank that will control all finance. Things like the European Central Bank are stepping stones to that and will be in that hierarchy of the banking system headed by the World Central Bank, with the European Central Bank and other regional central banks around the world subordinate to the World Central Bank in that financial structure. They want a world army dictating globally and imposing the will of the world government on any society, any country, any community that doesn't want to accept the centralized tyrannical diktats. And they want a world currency which is designed to be simply electronic, no cash, a single world currency. And this is why the world is moving so fast towards a cashless society. This is all planned. It's not happening by accident. They're shutting down ATMs. They're shutting down bank branches to make it more and more difficult to work with cash to bring in this cashless electronic currency, which means that whoever controls the computer system controls your finances. They control everything. They control what you purchase, if you can purchase. And the plan is to make the only alternative to that eventually barter to be illegal, because they'll say we can't tax it. And to impose and bring about this whole agenda of centralized global control, which is designed to lead to the point not too far into the future, by the way, where the human mind, the human brain is connected to artificial intelligence, and artificial intelligence will become the human mind and become human perception. No, that's not that David Icke, that mad conspiracy theorist. This is what the Silicon Valley crazies are now predicting. People like Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive, Google big time involved in this AI control agenda, just like Facebook are. And he's talking about having this connection starting to be in place by 2030. We're just entering 2018. And to stop all this coming out and the truth being told about what the agenda is and where we're heading, and what these apparently random events really mean if you fit them all together and see how they connect, they have to have control of the flows of information. Because from information comes human perception, and therefore if you can control the information, you control human perception. And if you keep from people the fact that all these things are not random, but they're connected and they're going in a certain direction, then most people will not have the perception that they're going in a certain direction and then realize what's really going on. So what we're seeing increasingly, and this will become more extreme through 2018, if we sit back and allow it, we're going to see more and more blatant censorship of anything that questions the official narrative. So control of information becoming more and more blatant is a big theme, not just of 2018, but from here on in. We're also likely to see, because of what I've already explained, more and more talk, discussion about the benefits of a world government. They're already now, I was talking about this and writing about this in the 1990s, but they're already now having things like world government summits And there are organizations being created, at least one by people connected to the ultra global manipulator. He's still at a gopher level, but in the realm of what you can see, an ultra manipulator, George Soros, the billionaire financier. And if he's connected to something, then it's bad for humanity, because his organizations are involved in overthrowing governments through people's revolutions. They're involved in making the migrant crisis and the flow of migrants into Europe more and more extreme. And they're involved in seeking to introduce all these elements that I'm talking about of where the world is designed to go, including we need a world government. The world currency through the cashless society, of course, is being talked about more and more. And you're also going to see the gathering talk about the need for some form of world army to stop wars breaking out by dismantling national armies. So through 2018, what we're going to see are stepping stones in apparently random events and random statements towards this this whole structure that I'm talking about, the Hunger Games Society. And of course, we're seeing in Britain increasing efforts to block Brexit and to overturn the result of the democratic referendum vote by the majority of British voters that decided to come out of the EU. Now, this week we've had, again, EU dark suits, unelected, saying, oh no, you don't have to leave, you can stay, you can change your mind. And then we've got all these members of the political class in what are apparently different political parties, same political class, different label on the door, pushing for Brexit not to happen. Now, this fits into what I've just said, because this world government structure is designed to have underneath it a series of regional super states along the lines of the European Union. The European Union, of course, is the most advanced, but they want those everywhere. In Africa, they have the African Union, which is designed to evolve into something similar to the European Union. They want an Asia-Pacific Union, they want an American Union, and therefore the British people voting to come out of the EU is going in the opposite direction to where this agenda is meant to go. The idea is for the EU to absorb more and more countries within the European continent, not let any go. And therefore 2018 is going to see more and more pressure to try to overturn the referendum result, not least by having another referendum, which then they can manipulate even more and get the people to vote a different way, which is what's happened in referenda after referenda in the history of the EU. In terms of the Middle East, there has been, as I've written and talked about for so long, there has been a plan which in the world of the seen can be taken back to September 2001, but actually in the unseen goes back far, far further, to pick off regime after regime after regime in the Middle East, and the list was there in 2001 of Iraq and Libya and Syria and Iran and Lebanon and so on, also North Korea. And that has been unfolding ever since under apparently different administrations, left, right, doesn't matter, same agenda unfolds, same countries targeted that are on this list. And now, of course, we've reached the point with Trump where the demonization agenda is focusing on Iran and on North Korea. North Korea and South Korea talking is a good thing, because if you want peace in the world, then you need to bypass the United States, and you need to bypass the United Kingdom, and you need to bypass Israel. Otherwise, you ain't going to have any peace, because they don't want it for their own ends. And in terms of Israel, the United States, and Britain, always in there, are the trio of tyranny that have been responsible in the background for what has happened in the Middle East in recent years, since the manipulated catastrophe of 9/11. And so through 2018, we're of course going to see more and more attempts to demonize Iran and to unseat the government of Iran. Don't be surprised at all if you start to see the focus also turning on to Lebanon, which is also on the list. And it's all part of an agenda that goes back decades in the seen, decades, but further in the unseen, to balkanize the Middle East, to break up countries in the Middle East into factions, into cultural factions, racial factions, for divide and rule. And this is the policy that's become known as the Greater Israel Plan, to expand the borders of Israel further into the Middle East. And so these countries that have been picked off one after the other are absolutely in line with that agenda, as is what is happening now, which is America manipulating the so-called civil war in Syria, being behind the ISIS terror army, proxy army, which was designed to remove Assad, but then Russia intervened to put a spanner in that works. And now we have a situation where America is occupying areas of Syria, which they're saying we're not leaving. Now, the ISIS threat appears to be in its dying days in Syria. And yet America is saying we're staying. Well, they're staying because the idea is to break up Syria, just like they broke up the Balkans when the former Yugoslavia came to an end. And they're going to use the Kurds, they already are, to occupy and balkanize, break up Syria. This is what Turkey are kicking off about now. So this is another trend that we're going to see continue through 2018. Another country to watch very closely is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is not controlled by King Salman, which is what we're supposed to believe. It's actually controlled, at least within Saudi Arabia, by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's known in Saudi Arabia now as Mr. Everything, because he controls everything. And he, as I point out in the new book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, is a puppet of Israel and of the United States. You're going to see big changes along the road in Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia is, like I say, a puppet of Israel and the United States, also Britain, of course, which actually created Saudi Arabia and put the House of Saud, the fake royal family, into power for its own ends. And this is why you have the condemnation of Iran for allegedly funding terrorism, while Saudi Arabia is one of the biggest conduits for terrorism on planet Earth. Throw in the United Arab Emirates as well, and others, but particularly Saudi Arabia. And it can create a human catastrophe in Yemen, using British and American state-of-the-art weapons, with mass murder of civilians, mass murder of children, and famine and disease that's come from that. And there's not a word of condemnation from the moral West in terms of America and Britain, etc. This is why, because Saudi Arabia are in the team. This is why there's no condemnation of the United Arab Emirates. There's no condemnation of Bahrain and the terrorizing of the population there by another fake royal family. Because they're part of the team. They're part of the web. Therefore, they do what they bloody like. But what has happened since the election of Trump that is actually most significant? People get pulled off into other things. This is the no. They may be relevant. I'm not saying they're not. But the most important thing is that Israel took over the White House. Israel controls Trump utterly. This is why, from the moment that Trump was elected, Netanyahu's far-right regime in Israel started without any holding back at all the increasing imposition of Jewish settlements in occupied Palestinian land. Before it was, well, we'll get away with as many as we can before we get a bit of comeback. Now there is no comeback. Therefore, they do what they bloody like again, and that is what is happening. They're basically just doing whatever they choose, taking over all that Palestinian land, throwing the Palestinians out, building the settlements. And Trump is saying, okay. And the movement of the capital, or at least the support for it by the United States, of the Israeli capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, is only the start. The consequences of that are going to become more and more obvious during 2018 as well. But we should remember this. Going into that long-term plan, the plan is to replace the famous mosque on what the Israelis call Temple Mount in Jerusalem with a rebuilt Solomon's Temple. In other words, they want rid of that mosque so they can build their temple on the site. And so you're going to see more and more, not necessarily, the whole thing in 2018. Of course not. It's a progression. 2018 is going to see the continuing progression unless we intervene and see what's going on and get off our knees. And so you're going to see more evidence, if you like, that this whole idea of replacing the mosque with a new Solomon's Temple is the plan unfolding. And because of the involvement in Israel, which is just a fiefdom for the Rothschilds, most Israelis are not involved in this. They're just pawns in a game and take the consequences of the game like the rest of us. This is why there's thousands of Israelis on the streets protesting against Netanyahu. The thing is that the few claim to speak for everyone else, so that when you challenge the few, you can be accused of saying they're all involved. I'm the last person saying that. It's a very few. Working at this time through the Netanyahu regime, which by any criteria is far, far right. And because the evidence is there to be uncovered about what's going on and the Israel involvement in it, this is why you have this Israeli network of ultra-Zionist hate groups operating in the different countries, whose job it is to silence people who are exposing what's going on. And they do it by using the label racism. You're anti-Semitic. Which means, if we look at it, what they're doing is exploiting the horrendous suffering of Jewish people in Germany, and others, by the way. They're exploiting that to bring about and support their agenda today for silencing dissent against Israel. So you're going to see more and more attempts through 2018 using the excuse, the manufactured excuse, almost most of the time, of anti-Semitism to silence genuine and absolutely legitimate exposure and challenge of the behavior of Israel in multiple areas, multiple ways. But one of the other things that I see happening through 2018 and beyond, all these things are 2018 and beyond, is that more and more people are looking at Israel and they're going, well, hold on a minute. Maybe there is something to challenge here. Maybe there is something to question about the way these people are behaving. And the fact that they've got so confident since the election of Trump that they think they could do what they like, and they are, it's actually putting on public display what some of us have been pointing out for decades about the manipulation that comes out of that country in terms of its government and its military intelligence arm, Mossad. And you're going to see more and more people speaking out about Israel, not Israelis, Israel as a political entity and military entity, who wouldn't have done before. Because what is happening to the Palestinians is, by any criteria, completely and utterly inhuman. Which comes to another major trend that we're going to see continuing through 2018. And that is the greater and greater control of human society by artificial intelligence. And who controls artificial intelligence, therefore, controls the world, and it won't be the mass of the population that will control artificial intelligence. More and more, like I said earlier, we're seeing the military controlled by AI, more and more government operation and financial operation is controlled by AI. We're now having AI journalistic media reports written by artificial intelligence, and we're going to see that continue as well. We're having people censored in terms of social media posts and internet posts, and censored by where they are put in the search engines like Google by AI, i.e. whoever controls AI. And that whole plan that I've been writing about for so long, of this what's now known as the Internet of Things, where everything's controlled by connection to the internet, including driverless cars. We're going to see more and more of that being pushed, because the idea in the end is that everything, including the human brain, as I mentioned earlier, is connected to the internet, or the cloud, as people like Kurzweil in Silicon Valley call it. And all appliances, cars, everything is connected to the internet. And then whoever controls the internet controls everything that's connected to it, which is meant to be everything, including the human mind. And so this Internet of Things, you're going to see being pushed more and more under words like smart. Anything with smart in front of it needs to be looked at very closely, because it's all connected. They're not smart in isolation. It's part of a smart grid, a smart network. And talking of years, like 2018 and the trends, a big year that they seem to be focusing upon is 2030. We have Ray Kurzweil, the Google executive and sales pitcher for Frankenstein, talking about the human brain mind being connected to AI, and AI doing increasingly human thinking until it does all human thinking from around 2030. We have Agenda 2030, which is a UN agenda that I've been exposing again for years and years and years, which is to transform global society into the structure that I mentioned earlier. And in Saudi Arabia, the crown prince, puppet of Israel, the United States and Britain, is proposing something called Vision 2030, which includes a massive mega city, smart city, run in its entirety by AI. So these are the trends. Another trend that's going to continue is mass immigration, because the idea is to there are many levels of it, and I go into this in some detail in the new book. But when you can't criticize it, it's that simple when you break it down. Look at the things you cannot criticize without being called a bigot, a racist, transphobic, genderphobic, whatever that next frickin' phobic they come up with. Look at what you can't challenge or question without getting the tidal wave of abuse back. Every single one of them is the agenda, the reasons for which I explain in detail in the new book. So that's another trend that's going to continue. But there are some good things too, because as I've seen in the last 2 years as I've traveled around the world, the questioning of official narratives is growing and growing and growing and growing. More and more people are beginning to wake up to the fact that the world is nothing like they thought it was, and it's not run by the forces that they thought it was. And this is, again, a major reason for this panic to lock down the free flow of information on the internet, to stop more and more people having access to information that says, hey, you know your way you look at the world? Yeah, well, maybe there's another way. Have a look at this. Do you know, that actually makes more sense than what I've been told before. They don't want that. Of course they don't want that. So the idea is to suppress it, call it fake news and all this nonsense that they use for excuses. So what I would say to people is, it's not just time to wake up and see. It's time to wake up and do. It's time to wake up and stop cooperating with our own enslavement. Because what's the difference between not knowing you're being enslaved and taking down a road to total control, and seeing it's happening but doing nothing about it? People say knowledge is power. No, it's not. The use of knowledge is power. Knowledge unused might as well be knowledge unknown. So let this be the year of 2018, when those awakening to see become in far, far greater numbers those awakening to do. Because it's in our face now. It's one of the reasons so many people are looking at my work in ever greater numbers, is because what I was saying in the 1990s is now happening. It's no longer a projection. It's no longer, well, this is the plan. We're seeing it. And the UK tour, evening events tour that I'm doing in the spring is way on the way to being a complete sellout from start to finish in every city. Because this awakening is starting to manifest. So please, let one of the reasons we remember 2018 be it was the time that humans got off their frickin' knees.